the sluggo. Slant and go.
Casey the Beef Cregan. See, I forgot to take that little bit right there away, so no one can see our lovely faces. But there we are. I figured it out now. Instead of the hour we went with Chris Cox a couple of years ago with no faces on this podcast, which could be seen as a good thing by some people, right?
It was.
Hey,
highest rated show.
And I want you to know that I get a bad reputation. When I texted you today, or did the description of this show, you took that completely the wrong way. What I meant was you had an opinion about, we were texting, and you had an opinion that you wanted to share on this show, and I didn't have an opinion. That's why I said, Casey will talk and I will listen. Now, turns out that's usually how the show goes, but that's not what I meant at all. So
no, I took it and ran. That's all it is.
Lots of fun. Okay, we missed last week. So what you been up to? You been traveling more around the state?
Yeah, I was in Myrtle Beach for work. I actually brought the wife and the little guy with me, and then got back, I guess, midweek, about Thursday that week. Wednesday maybe. Loaded the car back up on Sunday, went to Mississippi, Starkville, Mississippi for 3 days for stepson college orientation. He's going to be a Bulldog. So spent 3 days in Starkville, Mississippi, and got in the car yesterday. Didn't make the last boat in time, so stayed in Hilton Head. So tonight is the first night that I'm going to lay in my bed sometime. And I'm excited.
just lay there. Starkville, Mississippi. Now, I have traveled on my drive from South Carolina to Austin. I did go down by there. I didn't stop, but I went through there. Hope it's changed since I went through there, because at least the part that you always, it's weird. You go through a town and you're just driving through and you say, well, this place is you're seeing 85 miles an hour. You're seeing like 10 miles of the city, not any residential area or the University, Mississippi State, where your stepson's going to be going. So what's it like in Starkville?
Man, I was honestly, I wouldn't say necessarily impressed, but I was surprised at how nice the town is, actually, because I'd been to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where the University of Southern Mississippi is, and it's kind of old-fashioned. It's kind of stereotypically, I guess, how I would have pictured as a kid from New Jersey being in Mississippi. Starkville kind of feels it's a really kind of walkable town, walkable college town. The campus is really pretty big. I know it's a state school. It makes sense that it's big, but it doesn't look that big. The focal point of the campus is the football stadium, which looks enormous, but it's built up. That's one thing that my stepson kept telling me. He's like, Clemson's dug in the ground. I'm like, this place looks massive compared to Death Valley. It's not. It's just built from the ground up rather than into the ground. So yeah. It was really nice. I brought Slider to a couple parks during our time there in the neighborhood, and he had a lot of fun. A lot of cool little kids that he was playing with. So we had a blast. I'm excited for my stepson, and I'm excited to visit again.
Cool. As you were talking, I realized I had made a big mistake. It was Hattiesburg that I drove through, and not Starkville, on the way down to Louisiana and then across. So
yeah, on 59. Yeah, right there. Yeah. It's right off the exit.
So and I remember seeing the signs for the school there, Southern Miss. So
we had to drive directly through Tuscaloosa on these side roads to get to Starkville, and it's about 85, 90 miles from Tuscaloosa. And that's a cool looking town too, but we didn't get to the campus. I think one day when we have enough time, I'm going to make that right-hand turn where it says, University of Alabama a mile away.
Cool.
And take a look. So I'll report back.
Thank you. The only thing I saw through there was the racetrack in Alabama. What is it?
Talladega.
Talladega, yeah.
Yeah, we passed that too. Right on I-20. Yeah.
Yeah. So the travels of beef is still happening. I'm not traveling anywhere, but I usually travel on Mondays, go into the office, and I don't even want to do that anymore, Casey. I'm ruined by this pandemic. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like a old complaining guy. Why do we got to go into the office? We've been working at home for 2 years.
If you're productive, I mean, why make you change that production? I don't know.
And it's a whole political deal. They don't want to give up the space, and I'm like, give it up, give it up. Nobody's fighting over it, right? Nobody. There's
No.
nobody. I go in a parking lot. There's 1,600 people used to work in this building, right? Now like 14, dude, not 100, 14, and I used to have to fight for a parking space and sometimes park across the street. And guess what? Now I'm in the front row, baby. I am in the front row. And John Chansey checks in and says, "Man, that is green. Yeah, and it's ugly too." I'm not quite sure. Maybe Casey can tell us the story behind the Notre Dame shirt.
Our friend of the show, Mike Pauk, actually, from 5 Foot Nothing Pods, as Nelson so aptly put it, he sent me a shirt. It actually has, I don't know if you can see it if I turn around, but it says beef on the back.
Oh, cool.
So cool. He coaches a little league team, and he got me a shirt. I don't know, birthdays come and he sends stuff.
Is there a significance to number 9?
No, it's my favorite number. My number that I played with and for my whole life for some reason was 21, but he's 21, so 9 was my favorite single digit number because I'm weird and had a favorite single digit number.
7 was mine, or number 1 sometimes depending on what we were doing. Hey, Casey the Beef Cregan, I noticed Nelson's in our audience tonight. Nelson, we appreciate you joining us, fitting us into your schedule and not sleeping through the show like you've done for the last couple months. Nelson's not happy with their recruiting class at Clemson, or should I say not fully happy, and we'll let Nelson explain himself in the comments. But it got a little bit better today. Another top 100 recruit. I know that's his bugaboo, and he's got a fair point. I'm just giving Nelson a hard time. Some of these recruits that Clemson's getting have been lower ranked, but Harris Sewell, Odessa Permian High School, Odessa, Texas, the OG of Friday Night Lights. That is the high school that the book was written about, and I think Nelson might be old enough to remember a book. I know some of our audience probably don't even know there was actually a book before a movie, but there was, and it was about Odessa Permian High School. Jeff Browder checks in, says another 4-star commitment from Texas. Clemson is trending to a top 3 class if a few more big trends come through next few months. Hey, Jeff, it is great to see you. Thanks for checking in, and perfect timing. That's what we're talking about. Another 4-star commitment for Clemson today and a top 100 guy.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Sewell. I've read, obviously, everything that JP puts out. I've read a lot of what the Tiger Illustrated guys put out about him. And the one thing that really jumps out at me for a guy like Sewell, and I'll be honest, I'm spoiler alert, I'm not great at assessing offensive line talent. I just am not. I was a soccer player growing up, so I just don't understand the interior line. But the one thing that really stood out on most of everybody's assessment of this kid is nasty. They all use that adjective, nasty. And I know a big knock of what Clemson has been recently, especially on the offensive line, was we lacked a little bit of that nasty. So it was really kind of exciting for me, someone very ignorant on offensive line recruiting and talent assessment, to see that. It's kind of exciting to see you're going to have somebody that JP put in his article today will play through the whistle. I love stuff like that because, quite honestly, I was a little cheap in my day too. So I love that kind of stuff, kind of mean, nasty, and an interior guy. I mean, he projects as a guard, so we'll see. I'm excited about it, but this class looks great on paper right now.
Well, somebody that does know a little something about,
he knows a lot.
Houston Burnett. Did you know Houston wrote for RubbingTheRock.com?
I did not.
Yeah, he does. He's also on the Morgan Thomas show, which he's more famous for. That's the word that came to my mind, Houston. You're famous. Houston Burnett knows about offensive linemen, and he says Sewell is pretty dang good on film. And Houston, we appreciate you. I haven't had a chance to watch any film. Casey's been on the road scouting players at Mississippi State So we haven't had a chance. We appreciate that. Um, as Jeff Browder alluded to, there's still a chance for another top 100 player in this class, and if that happens, that would be four, and there would be two 5 stars, and Vic Burley is right there on the cusp of being a 5 star. So if that happens, if the other one comes through, that shall not be named until we name him. Um, that I think would be the capper in this class, and even Nelson would have to say it's a pretty good class if that happens.
Yeah, it would be a fantastic class. I mean, I think it's already a really good class. I think if they come in within the top 10, top 12 classes in the country, that's a win. That's where Clemson is, especially with all these rumors and things that about NIL money and the fact that Clemson's not necessarily giving Nathaniel Joseph a bag, allegedly. They're still competing at a top 10 recruiting class. That's where Clemson lives. And heck, if they can go top 5, that would be unreal. So it's exciting. The momentum. We don't usually have this in June, Marty.
No, not the last few Junes for sure. Certainly not in 2020. There was nothing. Was nothing. We were crying because they couldn't get them on campus. John Chancey says in Sewell's huddle film, his first highlight, he pushes a DT 20 yards down the field. That's
I'm going to watch it
here. And Casey, did you know that John Chancey writes for rubbingtherock.com?
That's a lot of people.
Hey, Casey, did you know that you write for rubbingtherock.com?
You wouldn't know it if you've read every article in June. You wouldn't know it. But
hey, look, we've got 2 new contributors in the last 2 days, and I've told both of them. Actually, we've had 3. Excuse me, 2 have been approved. One I haven't heard back yet. So 2, at least, maybe 3. And I told them all, look, this should be fun. I'm not going to tell you to write 15 articles a week or whatever. That's nonsense. We're here to have fun and write about what we love, the Clemson Tigers. So you want to write 1 a month, whatever the minimum is, feel free to do that. I know you got a life and a wife and a kid and stepkids, and you're traveling, so do whatever you got to do. But
you're a good boss, Marty. You're a good boss.
Thanks. Till they cut my paycheck. At any route, Clemson's recruiting is on fire. It's going to slow down, right? We know that. We know the recruits are, the ones that they're on. Maybe one more on July 4th, another 4-star offensive lineman. That would be good. That would be the 3rd 4-star offensive lineman. That's the other thing I wanted to say about this recruiting class. You got a 5-star quarterback. Theoretically, you could have 3 4-star offensive linemen in this class, along with a very high 4-star defensive player in Vic Burley, and maybe a very, very high defensive lineman coming up in a couple of weeks. But that's really about what I had on the recruiting, other than, as you said, the biggest worst kept secret in the world, Nathaniel Joseph going to Miami, and Louisville pulling out a 5-star running back after a weekend of Lamborghinis and jets or whatever it was.
Ruben Owens. Yeah.
It worked, apparently. And Louisville's got a real good class. I haven't looked at it lately, but I heard something the other day. They're in like the top 10 or 12 right now. So
I don't know what they're doing. They got something.
Lamborghinis and Lears. That's it. There's going to be a rap song out about Lamborghinis and Lear jets.
I think a little bit. Some Clemson folks that I've talked to have told me that they think that some of this, maybe the more negative Clemson fans in the Southeast here that live kind of close to me, say that it might be a little smoke and mirrors because there's a big need at running back that is obviously not being touched yet. So. Jeremiah Cobb is projected to maybe even land at Tennessee, if not Auburn, and it's putting Clemson again in the need factor for another running back. Houston Burnett had a name earlier. I'm not going to divulge it here. I'll let him do that. That may be the next guy, but something's got to give there. I mean, this is a great class right now. We love it. We love to hear it, but we need a running back. That is a need. We can't just. I say Clemson can't just go pick the next Travis Etienne. They probably aren't out there every year.
Yeah, no doubt. That was a once in a generation type of find, really. I mean, yeah, he was a good running back, but nobody expected him to leave Clemson, the all-time Clemson leading rusher and first round draft pick, or and all that,
Yeah.
or early second round, I guess. But all that was something that's not going to happen. Once in a generation kind of thing. So, um, yeah, Houston threw out a name that I hadn't heard, but I do know if he was from Klein High School in Houston, Texas area, that is the football heaven. The Katy Tigers are over there. Houston obviously has a million high schools, and most of them are really, really good at football. A lot of Texas A&M gets a lot of players. It's funny. Houston was mentioning names where that kid had visited, and I kept saying, "Oh yeah, they get a lot of guys from Houston. Oh yeah, they get a lot of guys from Houston. Houston has a lot of players, just by sheer number of. I think it's the fourth largest city in America, right? In the state, and in the state of Texas, the biggest. And football is king in the state of Texas. So um, they got some players coming from Houston. All right, we wanted to talk a little bit about baseball. Eric Bakich is putting together his staff. I wrote a little something on him today that I read, or is published today, that I read in the Charleston News and Courier about his attention to detail. I was thrilled to read that attention to detail. I'm sure Monty Lee paid attention to details too, but it was just really nice read on Eric Bakich and how dedicated he is not only to his craft of coaching, but to his players. My theory is that, one, it's the honeymoon phase, right? He hasn't lost a game. He hasn't had anybody thrown out at third base, nobody outs, nobody's got picked off, and, hasn't lost to College Charleston by 9 or whatever, all those things that will eventually happen. So it's the honeymoon phase. And I recognize that, but his attention to detail, there were several Michigan players quoted in there, and they were saying that you probably won't like him at first, right? Because he's going to make you do this, and he's going to drive you crazy with the details and the nuts and bolts, and you're not going to understand it. But once you start winning, you'll understand it and you'll begin to like it. So before we get to his staff, I was very, very encouraged by that article, and I am so much looking forward to Clemson baseball. Here we are. It's still June. The World Series just ended Sunday, and I'm already can't wait for Clemson baseball for next season.
Yeah, it should be fun. Heck, you can already see it a little bit with a couple players in the transfer portal that came along with them. People were thrown in the towel when Jonathan French and Dylan Brewer and other Ricky Williams were all in the transfer portal to go out and end up at South Carolina. I think there's two others, right? Caden Troyer and somebody else went too. But one thing that I mentioned was that there was going to be reciprocal, like there was going to be the guys from Michigan. Now I know people in South Carolina again probably aren't, don't want those Yankees coming down here to play baseball. And some of the stats didn't look necessarily overwhelming for the two guys that came from Michigan, but it says something about the coach that there are guys that do want to still play for him. And obviously they had to be vetted and be able to get in and transfer in. So I'm excited too. I'm excited for this guy. I really have bought in, as our friends in the Low Country, we're on the Shane train. I'm definitely on the backhoe. I don't know what the thing is.
That works.
And I loved Monty Lee. So just so for the record,
I put that in the article also because I don't want my support of the new coaching staff to come across as wanting to get rid of Monty Lee. That's not it at all. But a decision was made, and it's time to move forward as a fan. You mentioned those two players, and one of them, the pitcher, he was actually the player of the year, the Gatorade Player of the Year in Oregon, I think. So he was a highly regarded pitcher. It didn't work out this past year, but Houston comes through. Back at Buick. It didn't work out for him this year, but if you go back and look at his stats at Michigan in his first 3 years, he had some really good numbers out of the bullpen. Now, he's never become a starter, but you need guys out of the bullpen also. And if you're going to lose, I assume there may be more players going into the portal. If you're going to lose some players, you need some to step up. And who's to say they can't be serviceable or even good players at Clemson? We don't know that. They may be different than what we're used to, but I think it's going to be a different team. They stole bases. They stole I forgot how many bases they stole, 80 or something on the season. I did not look at their sacrifice bunts for you, Casey. But they do steal bases, or they did at Michigan. And I think of course, Dylan Brewer's leaving, but they've got some players that can steal some bases as we've seen. So only June, we got a long way to go, but really interested in seeing what happens on the field next year. And I'm trying to get my mindset straight that it's going to be a process, right? They may be short next year, right? He's coming in after the recruiting is done. Some players have opted, as someone you're familiar with has opted to go to another destination. Some are still at Clemson. There's
Draft.
one, yeah, there's one that's potentially a first round draft pick that may not show up on campus. So we'll see how it works out. But whatever it is, I'm going to support the guy for as long as I can, just like Monty Lee. I even supported Monty Lee at the end. It just didn't work out. It was time to move on and try something different. But reportedly, Eric Bakich did get his desired pitching coach in Jimmy Belanger from Florida State. So the domino effects of Link Jarrett leaving your Fighting Irish to go to Florida State, which was maybe the second worst secret behind Nathaniel Joseph at Miami, is that Jimmy Belanger became a free agent and he signed on to be the pitching coach at Clemson under Eric Bakich. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love it. I thought this was great. I know us as Clemson folk were all about getting John Pulowski back into the fold, and that was great. But I think Bakich hit us out of the park with getting obviously another free agent, as his former head coach was fired there at Florida State. So, he the last two seasons at Florida State, they were top 4 in the country in strikeouts per 9 innings, strikeout to walk ratio, and ERA. I mean, if those 3 stats alone don't just say, if get your mouth watering, I don't know what will. And obviously, you have to have the arms. And I think they dropped an ERA from 21 to 22, but they were still like top 4 in the country. They were number 2 in strikeouts for the year. I mean, it's just the stats were just overwhelming. Now they had players. If JP is has any truth to him, Clemson's got arms too, and so maybe with a little bit of tutelage from Belanger, whatever, however it's pronounced.
Belanger.
We'll call him whatever he wants if he can turn this pitching staff into some sort of formidable staff.
Yeah. Got his man, got the man he's looking for. And I think, that brings up a good point. Pulowski, the only reason, it was a familiar name, and that would make me feel comfortable. And you and I were talking about this earlier, texting about this earlier, about nobody on the staff from Clemson. I mean, Bakich was there for 1 year, 20 years ago. There's no familiar names except for that 1 year. I don't think that's necessarily necessary. Boy, what a word, what a phrase that is, necessarily necessary. I know some people feel different, right? They want all the Clemson ties. They want ex-players everywhere, even though when that happens on the football side, Dabo is skewered, right, when he hires C.J. Spillers or running backs coach and
Thomas Austin. They're up and down. Nick Eastwell.
Grisham, yeah, all those guys. Dabo gets skewered, but on the baseball side, it seems like that's what people want. And I want the best coach, whether he went to Clemson or South Carolina, which would be a hard sell. But, I want the best coach, not the best coach that went to Clemson.
Yeah, then that's the thing I saw on Twitter recently, within the last couple of days, actually, of someone saying that they were disappointed in the hire of all these assistant coaches. And actually, on the welcome to the assistant coach, this was said, because there's no ties to Clemson. Now, Bakich had his year. That's a tie, unfortunately, for that particular person. But if you go way back to a guy that was probably, if not the most successful, at least the second most successful head coach at Clemson, it was a guy that was hired from Western Carolina, and before that he was at Maine. So there was no real true ties. And I did some research before I wanted to go off on a little rant, and there was no ties. His tie was to East Carolina, and Coach Keith LeClaire was who really recommended Leggett to come to Clemson. Leggett coached under Bill Wilhelm for a year, so I guess he was catered for a year, but that was the only connection to Clemson. So before then, there was no connection. So it kind of has a parallel to Bakich. Beyond that, Bakich has his guys. He's kind of branched off. He's been at Vanderbilt. He's been at Maryland. He's been at Michigan. He's learned. He's been with coaching conferences and met guys. And Bellinger was the pitching coach right as he left with one of his guys that took the Maryland job as the head job. So chef. Yeah. So, like, there's so many intertwined webs here. Like, it doesn't matter if there's a connection. I get it. We're in the South. It's the good old boy network. I love it. I'm all about it. I would have loved it if Bradley had a chance, or, you bring Matt LaCroix, who was a name in. Like, that's great to talk about. But this guy, Bakich, we have to trust him. Dabo has built up equity with the football program. Bakich has none right now at Clemson. But if he starts winning and starts a little climb with these three guys that he just hired, Schnabel and Mazer as well, now they all have Clemson ties, and now they're all going to branch out and be part of the Bakich, Corbin, Leggett tree. So as much as I love, we love having our guys, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. That's it. Off soapbox.
No, stay up there. JP said the guy at Salty Period, he wasn't griping about Monty not having any Clemson ties. Yeah.
But he kept Bradley. He kept Bradley. Andrew C. came from Duke. I mean, like, I get it. Maybe they wanted Bradley LeCroix to stay.
Yeah. Well, and here's the funny part. Did Vanderbilt care about Vanderbilt ties when they hired Corbin? Did Florida?
No.
Did Florida care about Sully ties when they hired Sully? All they did was win national championship.
Well, Sully was killing them on the recruiting trail. I think that's what got that one. This is good news.
2022 shortstop and former Michigan commit Nolan Narwaki.
Another name Marty can't.
Flip to Clemson on Wednesday. High level prospect. Love it, JP. Thank you very much. Yeah, I can say Narwaki. That's pretty easy, even for a Texan. That's great news, JP. I was not aware of that. That was Wednesday. I might have to write
especially after losing. It's not as national news kind of idea with these kids, but as long as you lost a shortstop prospect in Maldonado that went over to Vanderbilt, surprisingly enough, somehow they got him into school, even though he didn't apply there. Salty much? Yes. But, you need to replace him.
That guy was salty and wanted Monty to stay big time. If you limit yourself to people with Clemson ties, just feel limited candidate pool. Exactly, JP. We agree 1,217% with that. And that's what I was saying. If Vanderbilt limited themselves to Vanderbilt ties, they wouldn't have Corbin in 2 or 3 national championships. How many ever they have. Jeff Browder, who cares about Clemson ties? If they make it to the CWS, I don't think any of those fans will remember their bad take. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. All right, we talked about Bellinger. Nick Schnabel is the assistant head coach and recruiting coordinator. Now, this guy was with Bakich at Michigan for 10 years. He was the ABCA assistant coach of the year in 2018. That's the year Michigan, of course, was a runner-up at the College World Series, and he's going to work with infielders also. So some continuity, at least from the head coach's point of view. He's got his right-hand man with him, bringing him to Clemson after 10 years together at Michigan, building that program.
10 years at Michigan together, played together at East Carolina. I mean, this is the guy that he wants with him at all times. It kind of has the Matt Heath hire from last year with Monty Lee feel to it. It's a guy that he trusts. It's a guy that he knows is going to go out there and get recruits. Top 10 recruiting class in 2018 that led to that 50-19 season that ended up in the College World Series final series. They lost it, but it's still, I think this was another slam dunk. You know, you always look to see, especially in the baseball world, that these guys are younger. They don't have families. They can kind of get up and move. Schnabel has 2 kids. He's married, has 2 kids, so he's uprooting his family. He's obviously a believer in Bakich, a believer in the Clemson program. So I'm excited as a Clemson baseball fan to have this guy, and I think his stats and his background fit big time.
JP has a comment here. I think Bakich has a solid, just like all caps, solid staff, the kind that can win, and that's all that matters, if we're being honest. Bingo, bango, bongo. I don't even care if you went to Notre Dame, Casey, with the JP sunglasses. I don't even care if you went to Notre Dame if you can win baseball games. And he's going to work with the infielders, and so they've been together for at least 10 years, as you said, play together. That's one thing. You mentioned something that I wanted to bring up. They both went to East Carolina, and of course, the East Carolina coach was rumored to be in the running for the job, and I don't think anybody would have been upset if he was chosen and accepted the job. But he just seemed married. It seemed like East Carolina seemed like the job for him, right? He was born. I did a little research. Both of us did research on the same show. What the heck?
Weird.
Yeah, I did a little research on him. He was born in the town over from Greenville, North Carolina. So he went to East Carolina. He's played there, head coach there. He loves the team. He was very emotional this year. So it just seems like they were married, and it was going to take something special to get him away from East Carolina. But these 2 guys also played at East Carolina. So a lot of East Carolina baseball getting a lot of pub this year. The other thing I wanted to mention is Bakich has been very complimentary of the facilities at Clemson. Now, I don't know what they look like at Michigan. You know, seriously, it's not a joke. It could be, but I don't know what they are at Michigan. I know what they used to be at somewhere like Boston College, but even that's improved. I don't know what they were at Michigan, but he's like, you know, he mentions it almost every conversation or every interview I hear. It's like, this place is nice. Imagine having a super regional here. And I'm like, God, it's been so long. It's hard to imagine, 2010, right? It has been a long time since Clemson hosted a super regional, and who knows, may not happen the first year. A lot of transitions. We talked about players in, players out, coaches in, coaches out. But I am just imagining a super regional in Clemson and what that would be like in the future.
Yeah, it would be something special. I remember most of my college career, all 8 years of it, was spent in Doug Kingsmore late into the first summer session. So it was awesome being around. Yeah, Michigan is nice if it was a high school. Thanks, Houston. I will tell you, I spent a good portion of yesterday in Duty Noble Stadium, also known as the Dude at Mississippi State. I love Doug Kingsmore Stadium. It gets loud. It gets rowdy. The improvements that they've made to the place is tremendous. But, oh, my goodness, what Mississippi State has as their baseball facility. Good night, Irene. But that's SEC money, I guess. It makes most college stadiums look like Michigan high school. So I'll answer Edward Shumpert's question. Why the Irish? This is my most favorite 6 and under youth coach pitch baseball team in Corpus Christi, Texas. Has nothing to do with Notre Dame.
Ooh, okay. All right, Case. Yeah, it's funny. I just happened to be flipping through the channels about a week ago, and they were doing 30 for 30 or 60 or something on Palmero and Will Clark. And when they went there, which is when my friend pitched at University of South Carolina, it looked like the high school stadium that Houston referenced. And they built, basically those 2 guys are what built that. I mean, there were some other players there, obviously, but, they were the main attractions. And they built that into what it is now. and they showed it. And yeah, it did not look like your typical college stadium. But as we found out in the last week, that SEC football money is trickling down because the LSU Tigers are paying the Minnesota Twins pitching coach 2.5 times what he was making in the major leagues, not to become the head coach, to become the pitching coach at LSU. He's getting a package of $750,000. Not all that salary. It said a package. So, I don't know if that's bales or marijuana or what, but $750,000 to be a pitching coach. And he's leaving not just any MLB team, a first place MLB team in the middle of the season to go work for LSU.
Crazy. Just crazy. I know. I saw that, and it was sent to me in a text message, and I was for sure that he was going to take the head job, but then I realized that there was no head job opening at LSU. And put two and two together, and my mouth was agape for most of the rest of the day.
Edward, we talked a little bit about Cobb earlier, and maybe JP can throw in a comment for us. The last I saw on 247, he was headed to Auburn. Casey, you mentioned Tennessee earlier. JP probably knows more than both of us put together, which, not a lot, but JP knows it. And he says SEC using extra money to really invest hoops in baseball. That's absolutely right. And
right next to the baseball stadium at Mississippi State, they're doing a brand new renovation on the basketball facility. So you're right, JP. I saw it firsthand yesterday.
So, and Edward, JP just answered your question. Check his stuff out at allclemson.com. That's where Casey and I get 98.7346% of our information is from Jason Priester. No sunglasses on Cobb, but maybe we'll have some sunglasses on July 4th with our fireworks. Let's say. Who will we target if not Cobb? JP, if you have a name you can throw up, let us know. I don't recall who Houston mentioned the guy's name we talked about earlier from Klein.
Listen to the Morgan Thomas show tomorrow night, and Houston will let you know.
Yes, that's great, Casey. Man, you're good at this salesman stuff.
I have the name right here, but I'm not gonna. He brought it up. I didn't hear about it from anyone other than him. I'm gonna let him do it. He's breaking it right here for us.
Edward Shumpert. See, this is why you listen to this show and watch this show, not for our handsome faces, because you get recruiting information. Ask and you shall receive. There it is.
Parker Jenkins from Klein High School. Yeah, in Houston.
Oh, and that too. I think he's talking about listening to the Morgan Thomas show. Morgan Thomas show.
Well, they know a lot about recruiting, and Morgan follows it, and Houston knows everything, and Alan, Big Al, is very knowledgeable too.
Big Al is very knowledgeable. And JP Priester at allclemson.com. Can't recommend his stuff enough. Use a lot of his stuff to write my articles on rubbingtherock.com. There's one more assistant coach, Casey Griffin, and we talked about how to say this name. I'm going with Major. Griffin Major is going to be the volunteer assistant. He played at UC Irvine for 110 games and has worked his way over to Clemson, South Carolina as a volunteer assistant under Eric Bakich.
Yeah, I love these guys. I mean, they're making, what did Bakich say? Like ramen noodles and a place to stay. They got to really bust it. And this is a kid, and I can call him a kid because I'm 45 flipping years old. Played at UC Irvine, played his grad year at Michigan. Obviously must have had a good relationship with Bakich, and has an opportunity to come down and, again, a single guy probably that's 22, 23, 24 years old that gets to come earn his stripes and probably coach first base, work with the catchers. I heard he's going to be working with the catchers and run all the camps. I really believe in. I like this hire. I mean, I don't know the kid from Adam, but I believe in Bakich right now. I think he's putting together, as JP said earlier, a very solid staff. On paper, it looks fantastic. Now, will the results come immediately? Maybe, maybe not.
Yep, may have to be patient, which Clemson fans are not known for. Any sports fans really are not known for being patient. Edward Shumpert says, respect and enjoy listening to Jason L. Priester. Hard not to respect and enjoy talking to JP. He spends a lot of time is very generous with his time with us. I know I can text him and ask him a question, and he'll get back to me. And one thing I do appreciate about JP, another thing that's not often said or said enough, is that he's kind of even keeled on the recruiting, right? He doesn't fly off the handle when things aren't going great, and he doesn't jump up and down so much when things don't go so great. And it's nice in the recruiting role, right? Because you either get highs or lows. You get people saying that's the greatest class ever, and things are just perfect, and we're going to win national championship, or you get people saying, "Oh, I don't care. We'll get players in the top 250. It's not good enough." So JP's rides it down the middle. What's Jack's role going to be? I don't know. That is an interesting topic that I don't know if JP has any insight into what Jack Leggett. Thanks, Dale, for the comment. Casey and I'm assuming
I don't think it's official. I don't think it's going to be an official title as from what I've heard from inside the athletic department. I think it's going to be more of like a consultant role with Bakich. Just he'll be available to Bakich. We'll see. Maybe JP knows more, but anything that I've heard, I have a friend who's married to somebody high up in in the athletic department, and I ask her all the time. So she didn't have anything, but she didn't believe that Jack was going to have an official title with the baseball team. But he would be available to Bakich at any time.
Okay, good, man. We're giving out all kind of information on this show tonight.
I don't know that for fact, so don't kill me if he's paid next week and he's going to coach third and run into the huddle again and slide and do all that stuff.
JP says that was a learned behavior. It was not always that way. That is absolutely right, JP. With age comes wisdom. With age, I'm not saying you're old, just saying you're not 20.
See, this would be cool.
Woody McCorvey type role based on some things I've heard. Casey, I would say we're breaking news, but we're not breaking it. Everybody, our comments
we're just talking to each other randomly, and JP's just breaking the news down here. So he's like the ticker, and we're just
we're waiting for JP in Houston to tell us what we should know. If we had our own show, we're just the ticker.
We're just talking to each other randomly.
Friends talking to each other. JP says he is old. You still get on that, Craftsman, when you need to, buddy. All right. Casey B. Cregan, you are not going to be available next week. Then on the 13th, my plan is to be in Las Vegas. Whether we have a show from Vegas or not, I don't know. We'll figure that out as we go along, depending on how things work out on the old vacay. If I'm having too much fun, maybe we won't. Maybe I'll go to a sports book and we'll put some bets down or something. Bet on some college football futures. So we won't have a show next week, everyone, but maybe in 2 weeks we'll figure it out. I'll be on location if we do. Casey, why don't you tell the people thank you, and let's get the heck out of here.
Oh, God, you put me on the spot with this. I don't have my script up and ready. Thanks so much for everyone that listens, especially Nelson Wilhite for all his help and support on Seldom Used Reserve College Football Discussion Group. John Chansey for being a good all-around guy. Uncle John McGee, as always. Read rubbingtherock.com and JP Priester stuff. Watch Houston Burnett show. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Maybe on Sluggo, on behalf of Marty Seldom Used Reserve Coleman, I am Casey the Beef Cregan. See you next week, or 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4.
We'll figure it out.
Bye.
rubbingtherock.com, allclemson.com, the Morgan Thomas Show, and the Chopping Beef is coming back. See y'all guys in a couple weeks.
I think we're done here.